First of all, as horrible as the gun crimes are, and there are far too many of them, and Speaker Pelosi is going to be speaking about gun violence, et cetera, it's more than just guns. I mean, let's look at these recent killings. Michelle Go in New York City, pushed in front of a subway to her death. Sandra Shells, a 70-year-old woman in L.A., beat to death on a street corner. Breonna Kupfer was also in Los Angeles, stabbed to death. No guns. The problem is not guns. The problem is of violent criminals who kill people. That's the problem, no?
Well, you're 100% right, David. I mean, this issue hits particularly close to home for me, being the wife of a SWAT medic and firefighter. My husband's on the front lines every single day. But the reality is that these politicians like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, a 40-year career politician, they can talk about community safety from the safety of their armored Cadillac Escalades and fancy limos. But we know what the reality is. Just this past year, I've done a dozen ride-alongs, and I have seen firsthand in communities across the country the frustrations from our law enforcement, the lack of support, the skyrocketing crime. And we saw in 2020 that the Democrats campaigned on defunding the police, and they did it. In March of last year, they voted and passed out of the House a bill to defund the police. That makes our communities less safe. That makes people not want to get into law enforcement. And we know that guns are not the problem. It's violence and a lack of enforcement and a lack of resources for our local communities. That's the root of it, not the guns.
Well, and it's violent criminals getting out again and again and again. And that's the result of these radical district attorneys that neither Biden nor Pelosi are willing to speak against.
Which is really a shame, because that is, like you said, at the heart of it. We see these liberal DAs that have been put in place by people like George Soros. They have been funded, campaigns have been funded to make these liberal policies like so-called bail reform commonplace and mainstream. But look at what happened in Wisconsin, the Christmas parade. And of course, the mainstream media didn't want to cover it. It was a car. It wasn't the individual. They called it the car creating the violence. But these are career criminals. The grad student in California who was just stabbed tragically, that was a career criminal who is out on bail. We need to address the DAs that are basically taking these criminals, putting them right back on the streets. And why are law enforcement going to continue to do the dangerous job of apprehending these individuals if they're just going to be right back on the street tomorrow?
There's another group that I have that seems to have no shame, and that's the feminists who are not saying anything about the misogyny of violent men killing innocent unprotected women. I mean, this is misogyny, and these DAs are enabling those misogynists. That's the worst kind of misogyny there is, killing defenseless women. Quickly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and a well-armed woman is a woman who can defend herself. She's not going to have to wait the minutes that it takes for 911 to respond. The feminists have been eerily silent when it comes to issues of trafficking at our border and crime in our streets. It's got to stop, and we need to get a hold of this crime surge.
Congresswoman Kat Cammack, good to see you, Congresswoman. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.